The MG mark is surely one of the most recognisable brands in automotive history. In the late 20th century, the label became synonymous with the glamour, freedom and excitement of a Britain emerging from the austerity and deprivation of the post-war years.
Perfect day for the road.
MG was born in 1924 as an offshoot of the William Morris's car business based in Oxford, the initials deriving from the Morris garages. It was the brainchild of the then manager Cecil Kimber. He first produced a sportier version of the Morris Oxford, the 1924 MG 1428. Over the next 80 or so years, MG were to produce over 50 different models. Some were sportier versions of a number of saloons, but it was the compact two-seater sports cars starting with the Midget series in 1929 that brought MG worldwide success. With their sleek styling, low, road-hugging profile and growling engine, the MG became more than a car. It was an icon of 20th century fashion and British chic.
On the snow. My guitar's asleep on the backseat.
Success was swift, and the company had to move 3 times in its first 6 years of operations to find more space. It finally found a permanent home in an old leather factory in Abingdon, Oxfordshire, where it stayed until production ceased in 1980. Affordability was key to its success, bringing the thrill of the sports car to everyone. The MGB at one point became the best-selling sports car in the world. Since 1924, more than 1.5 million MG cars have been made.
I mean, where did your love of MG, first begin?
Well, in the 70s, couldn't really afford much in the way of motor vehicles, and my first car was an Austin A30 that I just used to sort of keep running to get to college in. And I was hankered after a sports car. Couldn't afford a Jaguar, couldn't afford an Austin Healey, but I could afford an MG. And remarkably, I could even work on them. Unlike some of the other exotic vehicles, if your MG broke down, you could always fix it at the roadside and it'd get you home.
Yeah.
I mean, that one over there, that MGA, I was driving it in France, and the head gasket went because I'd been driving it on the circuit at Le Mans, and the red mist came down and I went too fast I blew the head gasket. Well, all the guys from the club came over and there were elbows everywhere trying to get into the bonnet to try and fix it, and half an hour later they'd put a new head gasket on it. Yeah.
So, we're sitting here today in this beautiful car, the beautiful building behind. Obviously, the Owners Club has grown greatly over the past, couple of decades. What is it about MG that you think grabs people?
It's difficult to put your finger on, actually, but it's the whole history and it's the whole aspect of MG ownership and the camaraderie with fellow MG owners that seems to grab people. You can drive down the road and literally pass another MG and you'll see hands being waved and headlamps being flashed. It's not because there's a speed trap up ahead, it's simply because they're saying hello and they're trying to be friendly. And that's something that's unusual about the marque. I've driven other British classic sports cars and you don't seem to get that.
The MG Owners Club on the Over Road in Swavesey is the world's largest single-marque motor club, with over 300,000 people having signed up since they opened in 1973. Like many small businesses, they started in a spare room in a house with a small duplicating machine for newsletters and a lot of enthusiasm.
It was in the early 70s. Both my brother and I, my brother Roach, we both owned MGBs, and we used them for everyday transport, getting to work, and for basically having fun at weekends. My brother came up with the idea of starting a club, basically because we wanted to meet like-minded people. Our cars were getting on a bit by then. BL had been building them for 11 years, so they needed some tender loving care to keep them going so that we could enjoy them. So he put an advertisement in the Exchange and Marts. It was only a couple of single column centimetres, very small advert, inviting people to contact for details of an organisation that he just formed called the MG Owners Club. To our amazement, the postman delivered sackfuls of mail every day. And I thought, my goodness me, what's going on here? And when we read through people's letters, they were asking for the opportunity to go on events, buy spares, meet other like-minded people. So membership was just a few pounds in those days. And for that, MG owners received a monthly newsletter called Enjoying MG, which is just a few stapled sheets of A5 paper. They got invitations to attend regional events, a national event. We had technical advisors on hand who were volunteers, by the way, who imparted information to them and answered their questions. We had a range of spare secretaries for the different MG models so people could get the bits and pieces that they needed. And it just snowballed from there. Yeah, so for the first 7 years, it was done very much on a shoestring, with membership growing very slowly, operating out of a garden studio. We then moved to a house that I bought in this village, actually. It was an old Victorian schoolhouse. And we moved into there. And then one morning I found myself being evicted. Bedrooms were taken over and I had to move out. We soon outgrew that. We then moved into a general store, an old general store in the centre of Swavesey. And in fact, it was opened for us by the Viscount Linley, himself an MG owner. So that got us plenty of publicity. But what really made things take off was that in 1980, I don't know if you recall, but Margaret Thatcher had a big argument with the unions at British Leyland. And do you remember Red Robbo? Well, she got a South African chap called Sir Michael Edwards to come over and join the cabinet, and he was given the task of closing down the MG factories and beating the unions, which he did. Well, that created massive publicity worldwide, and a Save the MG campaign was founded, and resulting from that, hundreds of thousands of people marched to the British Leyland headquarters in Piccadilly, where a petition was handed in. It didn't have much effect, unfortunately, but the publicity was great. Our membership trebled, went from about 10,000 to 30,000 within a matter of months. And then it grew to a peak of 53,000. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. We arrived early in the morning on the embankment, parked our MGs along the embankment. I remember Richard and Roach headed the rally itself. Richard was driving his black MG V8, and Roach was standing through the sunroof with a megaphone in hand, herding cats effectively, telling people not to go off at different directions. But I remember a chief superintendent of police, Metropolitan Police, turning up. He had pips and omelettes all over his cap, and he was going ballistic because he didn't know anything about this. And of course he had to close off the embankments, he had to close off Arundel Street, and he had to close off Shaftesbury Avenue and Piccadilly so that we could put this petition in. But it was tremendous. I met my wife on that day, in actual fact. She was also on the rally as a friend of my sister's, so that was memorable.
It was quite a surreal experience because suddenly we were taking over London very early on a Sunday morning, as I recall it, and just the sight of thousands of MGs and just general public thronging around the embankment, and then, as Martin had said, the police were a bit concerned about all these vehicles blocking up the streets, but we managed to form into some sort of procession with the factory workers. They had a lorry with a TD on the back of it with a huge red MG, just sort of like representing the factory and all the workers, and this procession thronged its way through to Piccadilly, where we presented this petition at the BL headquarters. It was just one of those one-off experiences, and the power of MG itself, it brought all those people out to protest at the closure.
Unfortunately, the huge public protest was to no avail, and the MG factory at Abingdon closed in 1979. Suddenly, MG owners throughout the country were left stranded with the prospect of no spare parts and no help. The Save the MG campaign brought huge media attention to the MG Owners Club, and membership surged from 10,000 to 30,000, peaking at nearly 53,000 members in 1984 and 85. The increase in demand for their services and a need for more space for workshops and spares brought another move. The club successfully bid for the site of the old Swavesey railway station at auction, and the architect George Wright was commissioned to design a new home for the club. Needless to say, he was, of course, a keen MG owner.
We had rapid expansion, which meant to say that we had to gear up very quickly, because the demand for our services grew tremendously and the publicity was there. So we had to get permanent staff and more of them. We had to get bigger premises, better warehousing, and that's what effectively the premises were for. We initially grew into larger warehousing because the demand for the spare parts became greater. Because MGs are used often by their owners, sometimes running up 12,000, 15,000 miles a year, they need replacement components that wear. And one of the vital services that we provide is to offer exchange reconditioned items at very low cost. For example, this is a stub axle for an MGB, and this is supplied fully reamed with new bushes, ready to bolt straight onto the car.
This is another typical product which we have manufactured. It's a water pump which fits one of the MGB models and is, as you can see, well manufactured with a cast iron impeller, a well machined gasket face, a well engineered flange for fitting the fan onto the front of it. And it's typical of the product we would supply to owners all over the UK. We would also supply this to classic specialist workshops and resellers all over the UK, all over Europe, and indeed around the rest of the world. From the late 1970s, Martin developed a range of accessories for MG models. These were parts which were improvements on the original or compensated for something which was really a bit lacking, such as the mild steel exhaust systems only really lasted for 12 to 15 months. So one of the first ranges to be introduced was a range of stainless steel exhaust systems with a lifetime guarantee. One of the first things that owners wanted was an improvement in the power, because with modern road conditions, cars were not really keeping up with the traffic as well as they would like to. So owners were very interested in seeing how they might upgrade the power of their engine. The engine in this MGB Roadster is a tuned Rover V8, very powerful, about 260 brake horsepower. In the early 70s, MG actually made an MGB GT V8. It was a fixed head coupe, but there was a strong demand for a Roadster which was never developed. So people actually made their own. And this is a perfect example of that, where it has a 5-speed gearbox, a Quaife limited slip differential, a very powerful engine, and would develop about 140 miles an hour if it was allowed to do so on a track. A very desirable car, and this one is worth about £40,000.
In addition to supplying spare parts and enhancements, the club provides technical support in the form of telephone and email consultations with expert MG engineers.
But, how did it all begin? Where did your love of MG come from?
Well, I think you could say it's an infection. And the infection was introduced by my much older brother and sister who operated in the late 50s, early 60s with MGs. And so this family connection drew me to the Mark. And then as soon as the opportunity arose, it was natural for me to move and get my own MG. And it grew from there.
Okay, so what's your involvement with the MG Owners Club?
Well, having done various things with my MGs over the years, having written about them as a member, which then appeared in the club magazine, the interest factor got deeper and deeper. And whilst I was a traffic police officer for most of the 30 years I did in the police, the MG activities was a very serious hobby, and long before I retired I had a closer involvement with the club in respect of supporting members on technical queries, and when I retired I stepped sideways into a full-time role in that respect.
Oh, okay, so you talked about some modifications that you've done. Can you give me any examples that you've done over the years?
I think, yeah, probably the best example that I'm known for is the fact that my 68 MGB, I converted it to a V8 specification. But by chance rather than design, I was able to buy from Lucas as disposal stock an electronic fuel injection system. And we're now going back into 1982 when electronic fuel injection was really quite unknown. And the guide I was using was the fact that the manifold, I thought I could fit this under a bonnet without modifying it. And that's effectively what we did, a Self and a Pell. But the knock-on effect was that it created the first fuel-injected V8 MGB in the world.
Seminars are a more recent addition to the support services offered by the MG Owners Club and attract international attention.
Cleanliness is next to godliness. Actually, the dishwasher is the slickest tool that you've got in your house. You can take all your tools, you can take your whole distributor, just put it in the dishwasher when your wife isn't home. But a word of caution, when I did that, I took all my tools and I laid them all out, and turned the dishwasher on, and they come out just sparkling. I mean, they're just really nice. And I thought I better run the dishwasher after this to get any remnants of anything that's on the inside of the dishwasher out of there so my wife doesn't know. So I ran it a second time empty and juiced up the amount of shit that the soap that you stick in it. So she comes home, walks into the kitchen, instantly she walks in the house, walks over to the dishwasher, opens it up, looks inside of it and says, "You son of a bitch, what have you been cleaning in my dishwasher?" I said, "How do you know? How do you know?" She said, "Oh, there's this ring." I said, No, when you walked in the door, how did you know?" Anyway, make sure if your wife's not home and you're doing this surreptitiously that you clean. It leaves a
John, how did you kind of come about MG? And where did your love of the car come from?
First of all, I'm not a car guy. Go figure. I don't know anything about Fords or Chevys or Vauxhalls. I don't have a clue. But I'm an MG guy. The first MG that I saw that I recognized as an MG, or it was explained to me that it was an MG, was when I was traveling in the UK in 1962 with the Boy Scouts. And my host had a Boy Scout. Had an MG-TC, but it wasn't until, that was 62, and it wasn't until 65 that I was with a friend of mine who had an MGA, and we went to a shop to have his MGA tuned, and I saw an MG-TD in the corner and fell in love and resolved to buy that car, which I never bought that car, but I bought a TD. And from there, it just ramped up. I started working on the car, and I fell in love with the workshop manual. Go figure. You know, with the stilted British, strikes smartly and stands proud. And then there was all this stuff about all these different threads and imperial, and I'm an Anglophile at heart anyway, so it appealed to my mechanical part, it appealed to my love of Britain, it appealed to everything. And it was so intense that I quit college and eventually, after the Army, came to the UK, came and worked at University Motors in Hanwell, London, Southwest 7. Worked there for a year, 72 and 73, and then went back to the United States and opened up my own shop, which I named University Motors. Didn't figure there'd be any competition. And I've been there since. So I've been an MG owner for something like 48 years, and I've been in the trade, having first worked on a car in May of 1971. I've been in the trade for 45 years. So I got a lot of time in service and a lot of time in grade.
Membership of the MG Owners Club comes with a monthly magazine. Articles and letters cover a range of MG-related news, from rallies and races to warnings about the damage that mice and rats can inflict on your upholstery. Membership of the MG Owners Club is not just about the technical challenges of keeping cars on the road. Through the website and the magazine, it is involved in organising and promoting a variety of social activities for members to take part in and meet other enthusiasts. Being a sports car, it's no surprise that one of the most popular and exciting events is racing.
My name is Jim Bainham. I run the MG Owners Club Race Championship, obviously in conjunction with others, but I'm the sort of front man for it. I've raced in the championship since the championship first formed in 1981, and I had my first ever race in this car that I'm still racing today, 35 years on. It's rumoured to be the most raced MGB in the world. It's been raced continually since 1976, around about 500 races, of which I've done about 400 in it, with about 120 wins, so it's been quite a successful car for me. The championship is based on the cars being relatively standard production formula, road going, most of them, although not many of them are actually driven on the road.
Good morning, I'm Mark Baker. I race in the MG Owners Club Championship and have been racing the championship now for I think the best part of 12 years. I race in an MGF, around 95 car, although I would say the chassis is as it was the day it left the factory, but it's obviously had a few body panels changed over the years. In 2014 I won the overall championship after a number of years of hard graft, trying, and finally managed to pull the season together and actually finished the championship here at Snetterton on the last race. On equal points, but managed to win it on countback because I had more wins than my fellow competitor.
The late 1970s were turbulent times for the UK automotive industry. A disastrous series of mergers and nationalisations, a failure to modernise and adapt to the competition from abroad, led to a slow, excruciating death for much of the British car industry. The MG factory at Abingdon closed in 1980 after 50 years of making cars. In 2005, MG Rover went into receivership. The MG marque is now owned by the Shanghai Automobile Industry Corporation. For the owners of these classic British sports cars, the future looks much brighter. The continued growth and success of the MG Owners Club means that they will be able to keep their treasured cars on the road for many years to come.
It's a good day for the road, and time goes so fast when you're with the ones you love. But I won't worry today, even if time flies.